is. So some of our primary goals for our unit are we work with students, we advise students, we work on career outcomes and on advising outcomes for our Success First students, which are sort of academically underprepared students, and then also students exploring what major they plan to choose. They're not quite sure just yet. Um, Maybe you heard about an event that we had on campus this week, the job fair. So we also do some career readiness pieces in my unit. So you may see me in different capacities depending on your role and department. But ultimately, the goal of my team is to make sure that students are as successful as possible. We do have an advising network. So if you are advising and that's something you're interested in joining, feel free to shoot me an email after this and we can kind of talk through that. We meet monthly and it's also got a distribution list. So just in case there's some frequent things that you need to know or that are coming up, you can also send out announcements to that group. So if there's big things changing in your area, or there's an event that you want to get out to students and you think advisors might be a great place to start, we do that as well. I also have the privilege of training most new advisors on our tool called Advising 360, which I'm going to show quickly today. But every new advisor, in order to get access to Advising 360, does a training with my unit. So if you are new to advising, you may have seen my face before. All right, this is the fun tech thing. You're going to get to see me struggle with all of our lovely tech today. So, we're going to talk about advising really more kind of in the big picture. Um, the article that Rusty shared with you references Nakata. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those principles there. And then I will talk briefly about two main tools: DegreeWorks, which is our degree planning software, and then Advising 360, which is our homegrown advising portal that is meant to support advisors. All right, so Nakata is that global advising community. So has great resources, and some of the resources that Rusty has shared with you specifically come from this area. I just wanted to kind of take a second here and pop up these core values for Nakata and um, show you some things that I think you already know. Rusty's already talked a little bit about that benefit of that relationship piece and thinking about advising as teaching, helping our students grow as learners, but then also bringing all those amazing um, career specific, field specific knowledge that you bring as a faculty member. So, just wanted to kind of put these up here and let you read through these. You don't have to read all the small text, but ultimately, just some overarching themes for advising. Every advising experience looks a little bit different, but in your classrooms with students, there's a lot of relationship pieces that happen with your students, especially students that you continue to teach over the life cycle of their academic career at EKU. So some of those big ones like that caring and respect, empowering and encouraging, helping them grow as professionals, and also showing them what professionals look like. We are predominantly and overrun with first generation students. So a lot of our students are really looking for that great guidance that you as faculty members already bring in your classrooms, and advising tends to pair well with some of those pieces. All right. So as Rusty mentioned, at EKU, advising is determined by the college. So in your college and in your department, that's going to be kind of the designator of how many students you have, what programs you might be advising. We work really hard to make sure that we don't give people advisees before they're ready, but there are going to be some circumstances where you already have some new faculty that are advising, just depending on your role. At EKU, every college operates just a little bit different. So some colleges Every student has a faculty advisor for the entire life cycle of the student in that college. Other colleges, there may be sort of a mixed situation where they have a staff advisor at the beginning, and then they have a faculty advisor sort of once they hit a certain hour requirement. Um, or you may have a situation where students have a faculty advisor for most of the life cycle, and then when they get closer to graduation, they're checked out by a staff advisor. There's also some advising support that happens that maybe it's not someone who's a designated advisor, but maybe helping support advisors within your college or department. So each college has a little bit different structure. So, not to get too specific for you guys because you're all from different areas, but that'll be a conversation that you'll be able to have with your department chair and within your college to kind of say, what's our structure look like? We'll also lean on some of what Rusty said at the beginning is I do think we have a good culture of support. At EKU. So there's going to be somebody else in your unit that's been advising for a while, and often is there's a designated person that might also help within your college in some of the advising matters. Of course, I'm happy to support and want to be there to support, but there's also some just specific things to your programs that you're working in that may be a little bit different based on where you're going, what program you're going to be advising for. Baseline to be an advisor, to get some of these access pieces in full versions that I'm going to be talking about. And many of you, we have to already do this piece. You know, we've got FERPA training, data trustees training. You have to have an access request for DegreeWorks and for Slate, which is our kind of CRM that we use Advising 360 through. And then you do have to do a short 1 hour training in order to use Advising 360 as a tool. After you do those things, you do also within Advising 360 get some modules. You're not right now, there's not a requirement to complete them, but they're just there as sort of a reminder of different processes and procedures that you may maybe you didn't need them when you did your initial training. Maybe you aren't dealing with a lot of incoming students, so you don't need as much information about placement based on ACT, but you need a reminder later. So we've got some different things that exist in Advising 360 to just kind of check back in on some of those pieces. Right. So we tried to sum it down. I worked with some of the areas that I work through retention and graduation to kind of break down what ideally we would love to see in every advising session. So, again, as Rusty mentioned, these things look different. A lot of times, students get to a point where they're just like, I want my registration access code. That RAC number is what we call it at EKU. Um, we know that there's some students that you may be an advisor for that you only hear from one time a semester, but there may be other students that you hear from multiple times a semester because they're needing a little bit of additional support. Ultimately, in an advising session, we want to kind of break it down into 5 different pieces. So, going back to some of those NACADA core values, we want you to be able to connect with these students, to encourage and support them. We know that you have great knowledge in your field, and helping them sort of envision what this looks like for them as they grow in your program. Doing a general check-in. So, how are things going? How are things going academically? How are things going personally? Depending on, what level of student you might be advising. Maybe it's a new student that moved from out of state and is struggling with sort of getting started at EKU. Maybe it's a student that, is new to your program or is a transfer student. And what does that look like for them? Maybe it's a student that's about to graduate and we've got exciting plans that are happening, or even just, preparing for an internship or preparing for a co op, different things. Every student's a little bit different. And that general check in, kind of how are you doing and how are you doing academically, not only gives you information that you need to help them plan, but also helps with that connection piece. DegreeWorks, which I will talk in more detail about, is our degree planning tool. DegreeWorks is going to show them requirements and show you requirements of everything that is needed for them to complete their degree. It's going to be a big list of classes. Sometimes they're going to be very familiar with it when they get to you, and sometimes they aren't. This is one of those lovely teaching moments where we get to help expose them to things that help them also be a better planner and learner on how their academic career is going. Within DegreeWorks, there is also a piece called the plan or the planner. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that piece, but that's more of a semester by semester type view. So helping them break down of those 120 hours that they need for their degree, they're going to take this 15 hours next semester. So really breaks that down and helps with that transparency of what am I taking next, which is often why they're coming to you in that advising session. They want that registration access code. They want to be able to know what they need to do next. Sometimes they have a pretty good idea. Other times they need some guidance, or maybe they're troubleshooting something. The last one, and this is where we're really going to go into advising 360 a little bit more, but it's this referral piece. So if the student in check-in is having an issue that it needs a referral of some type, maybe they are having some academic struggles and they need some tutoring. We've got great centers on campus for that. Maybe they have a food insecurity and we need to help connect them with resources on campus that can help with that food insecurity. Maybe this is an issue that there's something big going on with this student and I need to do a say it report. Ultimately, we have that built into Advising 360 so that you can help refer that student in great ways that help them, but also help you in your relationship with them. All right, so we're going to dive into advising tools. Rusty, I know there's a few things in the chat. Do you want me to pause here before we get going too far, or?
Bethany, we're good in the chat. No questions there
Okay.
so far.
Okay. So the navigation for these tools, we really, in kind of our IT world, tried to simplify some things in pushing that one login is going to be a great way to log into most things. So you're going to be able to get to both of these tools through going into your MyEKU in one login. I'm sure you guys may or may not be thinking about entering midterm grades. You know, you're going in there to enter your midterm grades. This is the same system. It just in that first card, you're going to have that login for DegreeWorks. You can click on My Slate there and get into Advising 360. Most advisors are going to use the advisor card, which is listed there on the right, and click on that Advising 360 in the loop. But as far as navigation, you're going to be getting into those things in MyEKU most of the time through that one login card. All right, so DegreeWorks. Many of you, if you've had any experience in advising before, most universities have some sort of degree planning and tracking system. The one that we use is an Ellucian product called DegreeWorks. It's a web-based system, so that means that the student has access, you have access, lots of other professionals at the university have access, but it is available 24 hours a day. So if a student is panicking about an alternative or what to take next, they do have the availability to go in and look in DegreeWorks. Now, in that teaching moment, sometimes they're not sure just yet how to do that or what to do next. So it's one of those great moments that when we're in advising sessions, we can say, this is a tool you can use too. You don't always have to wait for this meeting with me. If you're looking at, what's coming next in future semesters, this is a tool that you can use. The goal here, of course, with any degree tracking is to help keep them on track to graduation so that they understand what requirements they have met and what requirements they have not met. You're going to see within these two tools that I talk about today, there is some overlap. You can see some of the things in both places. But your degree works piece is really that academic piece. It's going to show you some of their academic record, so previous record like ACT scores. Um, but ultimately, everything that you should need to know about them for their degree is going to be listed here in DegreeWorks. What comes next? What's their program? You know, if for some reason you're looking at a student and you're not their advisor, who their advisor is, GPA, degree progress, all that information is going to be living in DegreeWorks. So on this first page that you go to, which is called the worksheet, as you scroll down, you're going to see different requirements for the student. Um, for example, this student is in healthcare administration, so I'm looking at what they've completed and what they have not completed. DegreeWorks makes it very clear. If it's completed, it's a green check. If it's not completed, it's a red circle. Um, this update is more ADA compliant than our previous version, so I've been given pretty decent feedback on screen readers and things like that that might be needed for students to view this. But it's a great way to help empower and teach students to also be a part of this process of what comes next for me academically. You're going to see some different totals based on different columns. So, how many credits this is specifically their core course block, how many credits they've taken there, what catalog year they're on. A lot of that stuff doesn't really matter in the small version in that meeting, but ultimately it's going to be a great place to give you a lot of information about what comes next for the student. Um, Within each of those little courses, so as you can see, like where it says HCA 372, there's that lovely little icon beside it. You can click on that and it's going to give you a course description. So maybe, you're newer to your specific program and a student's asking you a question about that class. You can click on the description and view it, but the student can also view it. So it helps with some of that transparency there so that they can see what's coming next, what it's called, but then also a little bit about it as they're looking at their degree program. Each block is collapsible now if you've ever used DegreeWorks before in a previous version, so that does help a little bit with navigation. But ultimately, this is a tool that the student should be reviewing as well as you reviewing as an advisor. All right. So I'll just tell you this is my favorite part of DegreeWorks. So I'll try not to be embarrassingly geeky about it. But I work with students. I've been an advisor for 10 years at EKU. I love doing it. Um, but students are always coming to me and they're saying, what's next? What do I take next? So this tool allows for us to help be very transparent. Yes, there are lots of supplemental tools and your department may use those. They may help students understand the progression of how their degree works, but it's a very digestible tool no matter if you're a first generation student who's never done this before, no matter if you're a student that really struggles with reading comprehension or following directions. Like the planner tool is very specific. It's telling them what classes to take in that semester. So we're really working towards students always having a plan in DegreeWorks. Ultimately, DegreeWorks is kind of your big list of classes, but the plan is that semester by semester requirement. So part of my favorite thing about the plan is that it's intuitive. It thinks about what the student needs next. Okay. So,
Bethany, really quick, sorry to interrupt. We have a question and I
okay,
didn't want her to lose the question. So
yeah.
Jamie has a question about the planner.
Okay.
So last semester when I was doing advising, students would show up and they say, what do I take next? And I said, all right, let's look at your 4-year plan. And they'd look at me like I'd grown a second head.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to take. I'm like, okay, let's look at the program's example 4-year plan. And they had no idea what I was talking about.
Yeah.
So my question is, you're trying to get moving towards where they have to do this. Is it like going to be covered in GSD, or as an advisor, should I just always assume my students have no idea how to build this and I should just sit down immediately and say, because in our college, they get 1 year right now with a staff, and they're building up to where they'll have 2 years with a staff member.
Okay.
But then they'll have the last 2 years with a faculty member. And so I'm just wondering how much I should assume they do or do not know. And like, because I would have never gotten through school without a 4-year plan, and they're
Right.
kind of winging it as they go. And they get to their senior year and they're like, oh, I need this class I had know nothing about. And so, yeah.
I love the reality of that feedback because it sounds like something I've heard a lot of times from a student. Um, we are working, I will say that the planner has got a little bit of a facelift lately. So I think with that, we're working to try to help that be more incorporated into GSD. I think one of the challenges that we face is every college is a little bit different. Some colleges are requiring students to put in their own 4-year plan. Some colleges have an advisor that puts in the plan at the beginning and it's for all 4 years. Everyone does things a little bit different. I will say that students do have access to view how to add some of these things to a planner, depending on what your department's view is on it. Some departments really don't want students to be in the plan at all. Other departments are really using this more as a teaching tool, and they may even say when they reach out to their advisees, "Here's a here's a Google Doc on how to create a plan." And if that's something, I would encourage something like that. That's what we try to do with our students in our unit. Whether or not they do it or not is always a fun challenge. But I'm happy to provide documentation too, because a student can start their own plan. And if that's something you're seeing in your college, I think GSD is a great place for it. Within GSD, I work very closely with Star Winslow as well, so she wouldn't be upset for me saying this. But there's that window of time that's really more college specific content, and I think that's a great add for that time if that's something that you can get your college or department on board with helping them learn about in GSD, because it's conversations they're having in that section.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Rusty, I don't know if we have anything else related to that specific part.
No, nothing so far,
Okay.
but I can let you know.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. Um, so one thing about the plan that I do like is it's going to tell you or the student what's yet to complete. So this is an example from one of the students that I work with, and I can actually see in the plan different areas that they still need. So when I click on this element 1, it's going to allow me to drag over English 102R, which is their outstanding requirement for English. That's a lot more intuitive than what we had before. You can move things between terms. So, say you're doing a check in with a student and you're like, "Hey, how's it going in math?" And they're like, "Oh, I think I'm not going to be able to pass Math 112A. I'll be retaking Math 112A in the second part of term." So you can move that second part of math to another term. It does have a little bit more, a lot more flexibility on movement than we had previously, which is part of the reason why I am so excited about it. But ultimately, you've got the option to add things from this still needed, which is a drag and drop situation, which is easier when you're newer to advising for your specific program. Or you've got the option, like listed on this page, where you can add and type in the requirement. For me, I've been advising my program for quite some time, so sometimes it's quicker for me to just type out the requirements because I know what they are. But when I'm working with a program that's maybe had some new changes or has a different course code that I haven't gotten to my brain just yet, that drag and drop option becomes just a lot more valuable. It's only going to allow you to put classes that exist in the plan, so that's another benefit as a newer advisor. Maybe you're coming from a different institution. I've had this happen before. And intro to art is art 200 at your institution, and here it's drawing 1 and it's art 100. So just kind of help you know which classes you're actually putting in and that those classes are catalog supported. Just helps the student process too. My other favorite thing about the planner is that when a student has an active and locked plan in DegreeWorks, it also shows them that plan in their registration. So this is a big efficiency for me because I work with a lot of students and they're going in to actually schedule those classes. And sometimes there might be a little bit of a disconnect on how do I get this class? You've given me this list of classes, but how do I actually register for this class? So with this integration, if you enter a DegreeWorks plan for a student, or if a student enters one and you have approved it, they're going to be able to see in their registration when they go register that those classes that you recommended. They can click on view section. It's going to take them directly to all the WGS 201 classes. So it does provide some, efficiencies that we didn't have before. Students can still search for classes, students can still go completely rogue and do something crazy that you didn't tell them to do as an advisor. But it does create this little transparency really between that plan and actually going in to register. The last one I want to touch in just on technological innovations that we have done at EKU is we do want you to have an in-person meeting with a student. We want you to have those relationships. That's why I put these little 5 boxes back up here. But there was a lot of feedback from advisors that they needed a way to be able to disseminate the rack number other than just entering the planner, downloading the planner, and emailing or printing or sending or whatever to the student. So within DegreeWorks, if you're using the DegreeWorks planner and you have met with your student, you guys are clear on what the student is taking for the semester. If the plan is marked as active and locked, and we are within the advising period, then the student will get an email that's going to list the plan that you guys put in and talked about, their rack number, and the day that they're eligible to register. So it's just another way. Of course, we are teaching students that we want them to use this tool, but we also know that students sometimes need an additional reminder that it's time for things, or they're not sure where to find things. So this was an additional efficiency that was added in fall 2023. So if a student has an active and locked plan, which has to be active and locked by an advisor, then they do get an email as well that disseminates that information to them. All right. Let me stop there for DegreeWorks because sometimes that's a hot ticket item. And see if you guys have any questions there, and then we can move on to Advising 360.
Any questions about DegreeWorks? I know it's a lot of information, but as I mentioned in the chat for everybody on Zoom, DegreeWorks is a centralized location where a lot of this work takes place. So it's an area where you definitely want to be familiar with that resource and the tools there. Any questions about DegreeWorks? Yes. All right. Bethany, you have a question here in person.
Not that big of a question. It's just when I try to access the DegreeWorks as of now, it says that the access is denied and I'm not currently authorized to access this application. Is it something that we're going to get access to after a certain training, or is just
Yeah.
okay.
So once you are designated as kind of advisee ready by your department, then they'll put in a ticket for you to be given access to the tool. sorry, our QCs on access are a little tight these days, so they won't allow me to give you guys access after this training. But if your department is deemed you ready for advisees, then we can get you access to that tool.
That would be after all the trainings that I will have to go
Yeah.
with. Okay, because I see that I have an access to my slate and 360, but not the degree work.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, if you're ready and you don't have that degree works, if you want to shoot me an email after too, I'm happy to help you get that access too if you already are ready to advise and have those other pieces.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
I can follow up if you need contact information as well. All right, any other questions? Yes.
So this is just a general question, but does DegreeWorks give an opportunity to, or a way to handle overrides? For example, I was a double major. I was, complicated advisee, and one of the courses that I would have to sign up for every semester, for some reason in the electronic system, the prerequisites were not set up properly and it never got fixed. So I always had to fill out a paper registration form, but I just got used to it every semester.
Yeah.
Is there a way to handle that in DegreeWorks?
So it's a little bit different. I think specifically what you're talking about, our override systems are handled through Slate. A prereq issue would be an override submitted through Slate, but it is a pretty efficient process.
Great.
If there was something, so not quite, but maybe you may have faced this because double majors sometimes get a little complicated. I would agree. If there was a requirement that you had completed in your major 1, and it's almost a requirement in your major 2, then there are times where they'll submit a petition for a substitution. That is something that can be submitted in DegreeWorks. So it's almost like an approval for your academic plan for that to cover that specific course. And that would live in DegreeWorks and does live there. As far as like the availability to register for something, it does live in the Slate portal, and we have an override portal for that the students are able to access and request. They also get notification once that override has been entered. So they don't have to do a paper form like you do or you did. But it's a little bit different than what DegreeWorks is doing. DegreeWorks is really looking at it like you're in the class now, and we need to make sure it counts towards your degree, but we do have a process for override. So that's a great question.
Great. Excellent. Any other questions from in person or on Zoom?
I just say that's hilarious that they make you do that every single semester.
It was the easiest way to do it, so I just.
Yeah, no, I know.
Right.
Finding these little. Sounds like somebody else needed to fill out the paperwork and get it
Yeah.
legislated to fix the pre-round,
Yeah.
but instead you did.
Bethany's office does a really good job making these resources efficient.
I agree. That's a little excessive, but I feel like sometimes depending on where we are in our how long it's been since we had our academic journey, I think we all have some, stories of learning moments for us once we got into the positions we're in now of things we would want to handle a little bit differently than got handled for us. That's why I became an advisor, is because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And so here I am helping students find those paths. All right, so we're going to move on to our second tool, and making sure I leave you guys some time to make sure that you have some additional opportunities for questions as well. But Advising 360 is our advising portal. So this exists within our Slate system. The thought behind this is that we really are trying to provide everything an advisor may need in order to advise. DegreeWorks is our degree tracking tool, and Advising 360 is really going to give you some really deep student information. Within Advising 360, on the front page, which most of you may be able to access, even if you haven't done a Slate access form, you can view some pieces of this without full access. There's some how-to guides. There's some links to things like Kernel's Compass, which is our schedule of, add, drop, when classes start, when midterm grades are due, and all those lovely things from the student perspective. There's information about our probation and suspension policies, because that may not be something you deal with a lot with your student population. I'm very familiar with those policies, but we know that we need places for advisors to be able to go back to check on different processes that exist at university. So this portal is meant to be kind of the home base for advisors. There are also announcements at the bottom of the portal that are kind of updates that come from our earn group. So if that's something that you are interested in, you'd have the availability to see that there. The big thing for most of our advisors, so once you are an advisor, you have been told by your department that you're going to be advising students in this specific program. This is going to be the place that you can go and view your advisor roster. So when I say advisor roster, I mean the students that are assigned to you as an advisor. We do have different assignee types. So maybe you're a primary advisor for a program. Maybe you're advising students that are minors in your program because your program has a minor. Or like the example we already have, we have some students that have double majors. So maybe you're a major 2 advisor for a student that's double majoring. If a student is assigned to you as an advisor, you're going to be able to view them in this list. We try on this front page, which is going to be in that advisees tab, to give you a quick overview of things that you may need. It's going to give you ID number, and some of this has to be a little blocked out because it's my actual advising list. You have the option to email them from this list. If you needed to pull their EKU email out, you're going to be able to sort by all these columns. So if you're advising for 2 different programs, or different concentrations within your program, you can sort by those pieces. You can also sort by advisor type. So if you are a minor advisor, or you know that this student is a double major and you're their major 2, you can sort by that advisor type as well. And then the other one that I sort by a lot is that registered and non-registered. At EKU, we do have a pretty lenient stop out policy. If a student is in good academic standing and has to take a break for a semester, they're able to come back without having to reapply. So there's students that you may know, hey, that student's not here this semester. If I'm doing outreach, do I need to reach out to that student? So you can sort by that registered, non-registered tab as well. You're going to be able to view their registration access code here. So that's one of the big things they're going to be asking you for. Undergraduate students at EKU are required to have that registration access code in order to register for classes, and they can only get it from their advisor, or in some conditions, they might get it from your department chair if there's an extenuating circumstance. You have a direct link to DegreeWorks on this list. So I know I'm going to work with John, and I want to look at his DegreeWorks. I can click DegreeWorks right there, and it'll open up DegreeWorks with John's information. And then the next part of this Advising 360 piece is what we call the loop. So you may have noticed Advising 360 had a lovely little circle icon on it. Our goal here, and kind of is in this retention practice, is that we want to create this continuous loop of support. So the loop is what we call our individual information seat for students. And I will apologize, this is a little chunky. I tried hard to give you what you needed to see without giving you too much. The loop is your student information. So when I click on John, my example, I'm going to see most everything that we think you may need to know about John. At the top, you're going to see some indicators. So maybe the student is on probation and there's an academic progress issue. It's going to say, hey, this student might be having some academic issues. It's going to tell you if they're an athlete. It's going to tell you if they're first gen. It's going to tell you if they're a student parent. It's going to tell you some different things about them just from the top, but there's also a lot more information as you scroll down. You can click and view their photo. For me, sometimes I'm walking out to the lobby to grab my student when they come for their appointment, and I kind of want to know what they look like. They don't always look exactly like they did in their picture. I'm sure you guys are very familiar that with your class rosters, you're looking at a student and you're like, oh, is that you? But just another thing that you can look at to kind of help with that connection piece. And then you're also going to be able to see their current and future registration. Within that, and this is a big thing that's coming up soon, you can see their midterm grade and progress report. So when you're doing that check-in with them and you're saying, how are things going? And they're like, great. Oh, well, I saw that your midterm grade in this class was a D. Like, talk to me a little bit about what's going on. Do do you understand the material, or how do we need to progress there? It's a great way to start a conversation, because sometimes students, they may be a little intimidated by having that conversation with you, or if you have an established relationship, sometimes they don't want you to know that they're not doing as well as they may be kind of projecting that they're doing. So giving you a lot of information specifically about the student and about what the student is registered in. Um, if we've hit midterms, you can see an estimated midterm GPA for some of your programs. If they're in a pre-program and about to try to apply for the full program, or something like that, GPA may be a big thing for your program. So just gives you a lot of different information about the student so you can have those great informed conversations. There's also a note system in the loop. So in my unit, you're going to see these as I've also got the Success Center on here, but we put a lot of notes on our students because our students often are kind of shared in a big unit, because we're trying to support them as much as possible. But you can see any note that anyone has put in the loop. Okay. So people that put notes in the loop, the Success Center, advisors, sometimes the registrar's office, if there's an academic issue or the student's been given some conditions to return academically, they may also put some notes in. Ultimately, we want notes to be something that you're okay with other people seeing, because they're going to be able to see them. And also, the student can do an open records request and request any information that's been submitted on them. So that note section is just one of those ways that we encourage advisors to kind of help with that connection. For this student that I've worked with before, we were really having some challenges academically and with motivation. So the loop gave me a place to make sure I had some notes on the student. So when we met again, that we could talk through those specific instances. You can also see Taisha Jackson, who works in the Success Center. This student has an assigned mentor with the Success Center. So that's also listed in here. The other piece, and this was that last square in the advising session, is within the loop, you can do what's called a student referral. So we wanted to find some ways to make those connections from students to resources. Yes, everybody is typically good about specific resources, but there's other resources that you may not be as familiar with that we also wanted to highlight within this system. So there is the option to just enter a note on the student if you want to just enter a note. There's the option to do a referral. So maybe something's going on with the student and you need to refer them some information, or they have a financial hold and we need to refer them to Big East Central for additional help. Maybe the student is telling you that unfortunately they're not thinking that your program is the right fit for them anymore and they want to make a change and they already know. You can refer them to a college or campus referral, so another college referral. Ultimately, the goal here is that circle mentality. We want to help loop students in and feel supported in lots of different situations. You're going to see a bunch of different things on this resource list, okay? We've got all of our tutoring centers on there. We also have, if you refer a student to the Dean of Students, it's going to pull up the Say It referral. So that's our intervention team run through Dr. Vance's office. So you can go right to the referral form from there. If you are referring a student to our accessibility office, so maybe the student has, divulged that they are struggling academically, but really also divulged that they got some support that they aren't getting here, and they have that documentation and diagnosis. That one is a little sensitive because we've got that HIPAA piece there. So we can't out the student's diagnosis to accessibilities. But when you click on that one, it gives you the option to just send general information to the student. They have great videos on applying for services and different things like that. So it's been a great way for us in my unit to help connect the student again. Sometimes we don't do the referral. We're lucky enough to be in the same building. So sometimes we walk them down there or something like that. But ultimately, the goal here is to help you have resources that you can refer them to in different ways. There was one more. The Biggie Central one. You can put a note in that resource referral notes if you have a specific comment that you need to make. It is going to be viewable by multiple people, so we just want to make sure we kind of follow that same notes protocol. On the Colonel's Cupboard, it does give you the option for kind of an escalated service. So maybe you're meeting with a student on Friday and they're telling you that they only have a 5-day-a-week meal plan and they don't have any food for the weekend. It's got some escalation. So who to contact if this is an immediate need versus just general information. So just a great tool to make sure that students are getting referred different places. Just to kind of summarize, and then we'll stop here and let Rusty facilitate any questions that you guys have or any comments that you guys want to discuss. This is a very powerful tool. This is let's see, fall 2022 was the very first creation, but not used quite fully yet. But we have over 19,000 student notes. We've got over 600 referrals, and referrals have really kind of grown into the system. They weren't the original in the beta version, but anybody have an idea of what the top student referral might have been?
Any ideas? Mental health is one.
A good one.
Colonel's Cupboard. Another one.
Actually, the top referral right now, and this one changes because these are live points. This so far right now, the Success Center was the #1 referral, and the second was our accessibility option. So even though we're not really even referring them because of the HIPAA piece, that connector of being able to connect students with that information was our second highest referral. So if there's something too that, you've seen something in this presentation and you're like, ooh, our department is doing this. Maybe we need to see if we can get on this referral in Advising 360. Please contact me, because this is how a lot of these things got added. Our Center for Student Parents is a great example there. They were also added kind of based on some advisors' feedback saying we need to help connect students to this program. And I'm struggling with how to connect student parents to it. So please let me know if there's additional information that you are interested in. And then I want to kind of pause here and let Rusty make sure we answer questions and can have some conversation.
Great, thank you, Bethany. Any questions from Zoom or anyone in person? It's a lot of information. Yes. Oh, we've got a question here, Bethany.
My question is, so if we're advising in the fall, when should we be taking the training video?
If you plan to advise in the fall, so typically our advising periods kind of start in September and March-ish for semester. Um, the trainings are offered 2 times a month. The first week of school and the first 2 weeks of school are a little hectic for my team, but I would say early September is a great time, or really as early in the fall semester. We do offer them over the summer. I know not everybody's available over the summer, so not at have to, but I would say probably in that first month. Depending on what date we start, we sometimes have one at the end of August, but that early September would be a great time for that training. It's an hour training. Right now we do them all on Zoom, so that way you can kind of watch from the comfort of your own computer or dual monitors. Um, and then we offer them twice a month. So we would also have a couple different things. And if you feel like you need a more individualized training because you've got some specific questions on the request form, it also says like if you can't do any of the times that we have more of a group session, you can do an individualized request as well.
How do we get access to that? Is something they have to ask for?
Sorry, I think I missed the first part. What?
How do we get access to the training?
So in order to get it's the request for advising 360 access, and I think it's all been combined now in that DocuSign form. So if you go to the IT request site and it'll say complete an IT access request, it'll take you to DocuSign, and then you would just list advising 360 as your request, and then it'll send you the link to the training. I think it's going to create an Asana ticket for you.
And Bethany, I posted a link to the chat that I think to be the most current page, given the website changes.
Oh,
But if you could check that for me, I can send that out to everyone if you like.
yeah, I think that should work. If anybody is missing any of it, we definitely, let me stop sharing so you guys don't have to look at my messy desktop. I appreciate the flexibility, and I really do want to help if you have questions. Your associate deans too are also usually pretty good on advising leadership groups. So, I think we have a great culture at EKU for helping students. And to me, advising is a big part of that. But also, what you're doing every day in the classroom is another just very large part of helping students feel like this is where they belong and really achieve those long-term goals.
And I posted that link to the session guide as well. So you'll see the information there that you can use to request access, and it has a list of information there as well. Any other questions from anybody in person or on Zoom? Yes. We have another question in person, and the catch box is headed his way.
I'll catch you. Hi, Bethany. I had a question. You were showing us the Loop webpage earlier, and I know you mentioned at the top of the presentation this afternoon about Success First students, which I didn't realize until today that that's a cohort that's separately identified by EKU. But number one, are they identified? Would that information be provided on the Loop web page that they are a Success First student? And second of all, is there anything specific that we should be doing for advising students that fall in that cohort?
That's a great question. I love it. So our Success First students right now are all advised by my team. So what happens is if I am, and it's really based on our state mandate for high school GPA and support. So if I have applied to EKU and I fall into that Success First category, which is really based on academic test scores, lack of academic test scores, and high school GPA, The first semester, they are with my team. Ultimately, the placement and they have some required check-ins for tutoring and kind of support pieces. So they'll work with us first. Once they are having that, and that's why it's called Success First. They have a successful first semester, so they end the semester in good standing. Then they are clear to move on to a declared major. So as a faculty advisor, you wouldn't have a Success First student. You would have them once they matriculate. So declare a major officially. But it's a great question. We really work to try to support those students pretty intentionally and work really close with first year courses and the English department and the Knoll Studio so that we really try to put about 5 points of contact on those students with additional peer mentoring as well. So you wouldn't have them just yet, but you may have one that's successful in that second or third semester.
Excellent. Thank you, Bethany. I know that we are at time for today. If you have additional questions, I'm happy to help make connections. After you have information in the guide as well. It's great to see all of you both in person and on Zoom. We'll be back in touch with some more information and updates. And thanks so much, Bethany, for joining us today. Very useful information. All right, everyone. Have a great rest of your Friday and enjoyable weekends.
Great weekend. So, are you okay with that late? Because I teach students,